Get some!
Welcome to the best show on the planet. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. We have international news. It's not great. I hear you on that. We'll cover it. We'll be all right. And then we'll get on to Trump's comedy show. The amusing fascist. Okay, so we've got all that coming up. But first, Anna.
Yeah, I just wanted to, look, it seems petty to even bring this up given the gravity of the news today, which we will get to in just a moment. But I wanted to be clear about something with our audience, because following the interview that we had with Vivek Ramaswamy, in which, by the way, I invited him to come on the show, there were a few people who felt that I was too aggressive. Okay, I want to be clear that this is who I am, this is how I conduct the show, and I'm not gonna change. I'm not gonna have anyone come on this show, either a Democrat, Republican, don't care, progressive, self-identified progressive, come on this show and use our platform to say a whole lot of nothing. So when I'm asking about what differentiates Vivek Ramaswamy from Donald Trump, I want to know, because we need to know what his motivations are for running in the first place. If you are not going to attack your political opponent in a Republican primary, then why the hell would anyone vote for you? And that was the point of those questions, which I wasn't even gonna get to Trump until way later in that interview. But he's the one who brought up Trump first. Go back, roll the tape, watch it. And he decided to immediately defend Trump's behavior and potential criminal behavior.
Yeah. So look, I'm glad we did the interview. I think that where he jumped the shark was when Anna asked him about the meeting that he had with people within Trump circles.
With Trump. And
Trump himself.
Yeah.
Before he launched his campaign.
He didn't like that.
Yeah, that's where he
got real touchy.
Yeah, he got touchy, and that's because he's obviously not running against Trump. We asked him many different ways, and he refuses to criticize Trump, and he says he's the greatest president of the 21st century, but he's running against him because he's slightly younger. That's not a real reason. The whole thing is fake, right? So that's my sense of it. But the important part is for you guys to get a sense of who he is and what he's going for. And he's in parts a smooth talker, but I think that his situation is relatively obvious. Look, I've now had conversations with about a dozen different conservative talk show hosts online because of the book, right? And what's interesting is that a lot of them are genuine, right? Now, these are not some of the bigger players, although some of them are, but they have real conservative positions. They might have real positions that we can't stand, right? But overall, they're having a real conversation with you. You don't get that sense with Vivek. So when if he were to say, hey, listen, man, I think they're bought and paid for, as I said like a couple times on the show, I actually totally agree with that. That would be an interesting candidate from the Republican side. But then he waffles on it. But he did say yesterday that he thinks that the people like Nikki Haley are circus monkeys. That's a hell of a thing to say, right? And so, okay, now you know that. He seemed to indicate, the only critique he had of Trump other than age was he seemed to indicate that Trump was lying on the 2020 election. That's interesting. So look, that you bring people on, no matter how much they filibuster and evade, etc., to try to get interesting nuggets out of them. And I think we did, and I hope you guys got something out of it. But are we going to be aggressive interviewers? Of course, that's what we do. We do it with Democrats, we do it with Republicans, we do it with everybody. That's why a lot of people are reluctant to come on the show. To which I say, good. You gotta know what you're getting yourself into. We ask real questions and we ask them aggressively. We don't play patty cakes. There's tons of shows for patty cakes if you want.
Yeah, patty cakes is not Cenk's style. It's obviously not my style. And after that interview yesterday, I felt I let people get in my head and make me feel guilty for who I am. Because who I am is not some agreeable, sweet, woman who's gonna come on the show and let people run circles around her. That's just not my style.
Yeah.
So if you're watching the show and for some reason it goes against your sensibilities to watch a woman challenge a guy who's literally running for president, don't watch the show.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm not gonna change my style. And I'm never gonna be bullied into saying things I don't believe just to appeal to any group of people, including members of our audience. Love you guys, but you guys are always gonna get the raw, honest truth. You're gonna get who I am as an actual human being who isn't, playing a role or acting on this show. And I'm done with it. I'm done having to explain myself. I'm done trying to pretend that I'm something I'm not. This is who I am. This is how I do interviews. You don't like it, that's totally fine.
Yeah, last thing here, guys, because I don't want anybody to get the misimpression that most people thought that way. Most people did not think that way. Tons of people just wrote in, like 1 million people just instantly wrote in. I'll just give you two. Sexy Speed Racer says, anybody who thinks that Anna was too aggressive with Ramaswamy last night is obviously a paid troll. I think that there was pretty much 99% trolls, but we're addressing it anyway. And Mountain Chaos wrote in, Anna, you were perfect. Loved you putting him on the spot and making him do the Washington double talk. And there's about 200 other comments along similar lines. And guys, don't get us wrong. We know where you guys are, right?
Yeah.
The overwhelming majority of the audience appreciated it. And that's why you guys come to the show, because we actually challenge people in power and people running for president. And that's what all journalists are supposed to do. But here we actually do it.
Yeah. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's get to the news, which is horrific to say the least. We begin with a developing story about a hospital that was targeted in Gaza. Let's talk about it.
Very, very significant damage in the courtyard area of this hospital. It's called Baptist Hospital. It's in the center of Gaza City. The Palestinian president, the head of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, has declared 3 days of mourning. He says all flags will be lowered to half staff because of the scale of the loss of life.
The Al-Ali Baptist Hospital in Gaza City has been struck by an airstrike, killing anywhere between 200 to 500 people. Now, this was a hospital where injured Palestinians were recovering, but it was also a hospital that many other Palestinians were seeking refuge and shelter, thinking that it would not be targeted in any kind of attack. Now, the story is still developing and there are conflicting narratives about what actually transpired. And out of an abundance of caution, I will note that we should wait for an independent party to conduct an investigation, and we should not just believe what the IDF says, considering their track record of literally lying about certain instances of killing innocent people, including a Palestinian American journalist named Shireen Abu Akleh. But nonetheless, the IDF refuses to take responsibility for this, claiming that they did quick analysis just right away, determining that it was actually a misfired rocket coming from not Hamas, but from the Islamic Jihad, which is what they believe another terrorist organization operating out of the Gaza Strip. Now, an IDF spokesperson by the name of Jonathan Kornikis spoke to CNN, claiming that they had conducted an investigation showing that they are not, in fact, responsible for this. But I thought one of the follow-up questions asked by the CNN host here was a fascinating one, to say the least. I want to be clear that they have not released any evidence clearing them of doing an airstrike. But with that said, let's take a look at what this IDF spokesperson had to say on CNN.
We are aware of a barrage of rockets that was fired by terrorists from Gaza towards Israel, and that passed in close proximity to that hospital in Gaza at the time that it was hit. The intelligence that we have from multiple sources it indicates that the Islamic Jihad, another terrorist organization in Gaza, is responsible for a failed rocket launch that struck the hospital in Gaza.
Hundreds of people were killed. There is going to be enormous scrutiny on who was behind this strike. Are you willing to share the intelligence, the actual raw data with the world that indicates what you're saying, that this was Islamic Jihad and not the IDF?
We're in the progress of declassifying. I cannot promise yet that we will, but maybe because of the importance and because of what is at stake here, that may happen. If it's believing the IDF or believing Hamas, I think it should be clear for anybody involved that they should believe the IDF.
Now, I want to be clear that we have condemned Hamas and their terror attacks on Israeli civilians on this show. I have no problem doing so. And I wouldn't take what Hamas has to say at face value either. However, I think it would be a mistake to just take what the IDF has to say at face value, considering, again, they have a track record of lying about the attacks that they have conducted in the Gaza Strip. I want to remind you one more time of what happened to Palestinian American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, who was killed by an Israeli sniper. They denied that that was the case, and multiple investigations did in fact place the blame on the IDF, despite their denials of that assassination, essentially. But Cenk, what are your thoughts on what's currently transpiring here?
So let me be clear. I don't believe the IDF. Oh, wow, what a big scandalous thing to say. Like in the old days in America, you couldn't say things like that. You couldn't even say when we first started the Young Turks that you don't believe the Pentagon. We would say that on air and people would be outraged. So why don't I believe the IDF? First of all, IDF has a history of hitting civilian targets, a lot of them, and always saying that it was an accident. Or it wasn't us, it was someone else. And so when you have a track record of doing it, that's relevant to the consideration. I also, that is what almost all of the government, different governments do when they make a mistake or they do something horrible, including our government. I've seen the Pentagon do this exact kind of lie dozens of times, and we've shown it to you on the show. One that I remember very distinctly was when we bombed a wedding in Afghanistan. And the Pentagon comes out and says, no, we didn't bomb the, are you saying that you trust the Taliban over the American government, right? Yeah, no, in that case, it's not about trusting the Taliban. It's about, no, you bombed the wedding. And later, of course, everybody confirmed that we bombed the wedding. You see, the reason the Pentagon, the IDF, and all the governments in the world lie to you in the beginning is to basically neutralize how damaging that news story is. They do overwhelming propaganda and they send out their spokespeople and go, do you believe the terrorists? I've seen that trick 2,000 times over. That doesn't mean I don't have an open mind. Of course I have an open mind. If they prove that it was someone else, then we'll come out back here and tell you, it turns out that mystery was solved and it was Islamic Jihad or something else. But for the moment being, it looks very much like it's IDF. And by the way, well played on the propaganda, because it gets at least everyone, including us, to go, maybe it wasn't the IDF. Congratulations on propaganda, well done. But we're gonna look at all the facts and give you all the facts. I've got more reasons why I think it was the IDF, but go ahead, Anna.
So one of the other excuses that we often see from the Israeli government and the Israeli Defense Forces is, well, we had to do the strike against the school that had civilians or the hospital that had civilians because Hamas is using Palestinians as human shields. They'll use that as a justification. And Cenk, you mentioned the Pentagon, which is an interesting thing for you to mention, especially since there is now a video going around on social media featuring the Pentagon spokeswoman. Her name is Sabrina Singh, and she is saying, and I quote verbatim, Hamas is the one putting Palestinians, those in Gaza, at great risk. They are putting command and control units inside hospitals. How about don't bomb the hospitals?
How about you just admitted that you did bomb the hospital and now you're saying, well, they made us bomb the hospital. So make up your mind, America and Israel, the governments of those, not the civilians, but the governments of those countries. Do you have an excuse for why you bombed the hospital or you didn't bomb the hospital? Which one is it? Because it's not both. It's not both. Why did you go out there and telling everybody, no, it's okay to bomb the hospital? It's okay. Are you saying it was okay for Islamic Jihad to accidentally bomb the hospital? Make up your mind, make up which lie and propaganda you're gonna go with.
So I've been following this story very closely since it broke this morning. And I noticed how it kind of played out on social media and how the reactions to the story by allies of Israel and members of the IDF, like how their reaction to it changed throughout the day. So at first, there seemed to be a lot of excuses in regard to Israel allegedly conducting this airstrike. a lot of claims similar to what you heard from the Pentagon spokeswoman, saying that, well, Hamas likes to use these areas and these places where you have a large number of Palestinian civilians, and they use them as human shields, just basically justifying the attack. But the media response to it was incredibly critical. So much so that I think that maybe, this is my read of it, and I could be wrong. I want to be clear about what we know in terms of the facts and what we're speculating on. This is what I'm speculating on. I'm speculating that once Israeli officials saw that the reaction and response to a possible Israeli airstrike on a hospital was a very negative one, all of a sudden tweets got deleted and the narrative changed. All of a sudden, immediately, the IDF, which apparently did not have the intelligence necessary to prevent a Hamas terrorist attack a little over a week ago, had all of the information necessary to determine that they were clear of any wrongdoing. Interesting, okay. I wanna share some of the tweets that I'm referring to. So these are 2 tweets that have been deleted. One of them features a Netanyahu appointed digital spokesperson who tweeted the following after the hospital suffered this strike. Breaking, Israeli Air Force struck a Hamas terrorist base inside a hospital in Gaza. A multiple number of terrorists are dead. It's heartbreaking that Hamas is launching rockets from hospitals, mosques, schools, and using civilians as human shields.
Sounds like Israel bombed a hospital until it was inconvenient. And then all of a sudden, no, we didn't. It was the other dastardly Islamic Jihad that popped out of nowhere. Okay.
So that tweet was deleted. I wasn't even gonna bring it up on the show because I needed confirmation that this person actually did tweet this. There's a lot of misinformation going around. We have to be very careful, right? However, someone asked this individual, why'd you delete this tweet? And he did not deny deleting the tweet. He said, instead he deflected saying, how about your friends in Al Jazeera that also deleted their tweet of accusing Israel? Al Jazeera published this tweet saying the IDF warned people. The IDF spokesperson called them out as liars and they deleted their tweet.
In other words, you did delete the tweet and you're trying to distract people with a rando comment about Al Jazeera. Who cares what Al Jazeera said?
Now, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, also deleted a tweet. I want to be clear that this tweet is from yesterday. You can see the date on it. It's October 16th. Today is the 17th. I say that because it's important to know this wasn't something that he tweeted out after the hospital was hit, but it gives you a sense of where Netanyahu's mind is. And it also gives you a sense of why he deleted it, okay? So he wrote, this is a struggle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle.
Are you kidding me? The Prince of Darkness said, get out of here. So this guy who's up on corruption charges, tried to ruin Israeli democracy, didn't do his job, let Israel get bombed. Hamas today is saying they were surprised at their success. They didn't want a broader war. You take Hamas also with the biggest boulder of salt that you could imagine. Don't get us twisted. We're not doing propaganda for either side, unfortunately, like some media. But some of the media actually has been pretty good so far here. So I don't take Hamas at face value at all, okay, at all. Their leaders are at least as much liars as any government in the world. But Hamas is saying now, at least, we don't want a broader war. Easy to say after you did your killings and now you're being attacked. I understand all of that. But having said that, they said they were surprised at how weak the Israeli defenses were. They were just going in to take hostages. They didn't know that they were going to be able to overwhelm Israeli defenses. Again, take it with a grain of salt, okay? But Netanyahu didn't do his job.
He did not.
Okay, they were not at all ready. They didn't have the intelligence. The military was not in a position to defend. Going on the offense is easy. You drop bombs on hospitals. They don't have Iron Dome, you do. You drop bombs on buildings. No one's disputing that they're dropping bombs on residential buildings. That part is easy, okay?
Yep.
Defending your people is hard, and he didn't do his job. And all he ever does is cause more and more conflict and war. When is Israel going to realize, and maybe the answer is soon, that the actual Prince of Darkness is Netanyahu? And that is in the context of, if you want safety for Israel, let alone if you care about being decent and humane to Palestinians.
That's exactly right. And look, I really want to emphasize that there's a lot of attention being paid to what happened to this hospital, considering the high death toll. And it's just jarring, it's shocking. But I would not put it past the Israeli government under the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu, a far-right prime minister, to carry out an attack like this, given the brutality that Palestinian civilians have been facing in Gaza since the beginning of this latest war. So just to provide the receipts in regard to residential buildings being targeted, an airstrike in Deir al-Bala reduced a house to rubble, killing a man and 11 women and children inside and in a neighboring house, some of whom had evacuated from Gaza City. Witnesses said there was no warning before the strike. Also, shelling from Israeli tanks hit a UN school in central Gaza, where 4,000 Palestinians had taken refuge, killing 6 people and wounding dozens. The United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency said. At least 24 United Nations installations have been hit in the past week, killing at least 14 of the agency's staff. There is no precision. There are indiscriminate airstrikes taking place. The fact that there is a humanitarian blockade without any chance of food or water entering, the Gaza Strip, tells you everything you need to know about the lack of concern for human life, innocent civilians. You can't live without water. Water is life. They know that, and they are continuing with the blockade anyway.
Yeah, so look guys, we'll sort out, I don't want people walking away thinking that we know with 100% certainty. We just told you, and here I'll add 2 more things and then I'll summarize, okay? Look, Mahmoud Abbas desperately wants to meet with Joe Biden to make his case. He's the leader of the Palestinians in the West Bank, not the Gaza Strip, okay? And Biden is going to Israel. But Abbas pulled out from that meeting because of how outraged he was about the hospital strike. If he thought there was some percentage chance that it was not Israel, he wants that meeting with Biden badly. So it's possible he's wrong. It's possible that he's responding to local pressure, etc. But that is another sign. The third sign is usually they blame each other back and forth, but there's some reasons why Hamas things can be verified. The fact that they said it's Islamic Jihad instead of Hamas, it could be true, like we don't know with 100% certainty, right? But to me, that's another sign of, well, if we say it's Hamas, it could be verified that it wasn't. So we'll pick a rando group and pretend that it's them. Again, this is the propaganda that all governments do when they do something wrong, and they especially do it in the first 2 days because they want you to only remember the cloudy, I can't tell who did it, and then once it's passed out of the news cycle, then they can come back later and say, oh yeah, mistakes were made, who cares, etc. right? So I'd be shocked if the IDF released evidence. But if they do, again, we'll come back out here and tell you, okay? And we'll make sure to do that. But okay, so.
But even so, I want to be clear that it's important to have an independent third party conduct an investigation, right?
Of course, and
I wouldn't believe it if the Islamic Jihad came out and said, no, we are not responsible for this. Like, you need an independent party to come out and do the investigation and figure out what's really transpiring. By the way, there are all sorts of videos floating around the internet indicating that Israel has released footage showing that it was in fact a rocket from the Islamic Jihad. We don't know what time that video was taken. We don't know which part of Gaza that video was taken in. There's a lot of information that is missing from those posts. So just be very careful with what you believe.
By the way, there's also videos that show a sound that only the Israeli warplanes make, but I don't know that that's true either. I mean, just seeing a video on Twitter doesn't prove anything. So, all right, now last thing. Guys, there's already 3,000 civilians dead and over 10,000 injured. So, does it make it better, let's say, if the IDF killed the other 3,000, but somehow the hospital wasn't them? Does that make it way better? I don't think it does. And they hit a bus, they hit a school, and they're threatening to hit a lot more targets. And at what point does it stop becoming an accident? 3,000 accidents? What if 10,000 were killed? What if 100,000 were killed? When does it stop being an accident and be intentional killing of civilians? So, and then finally, the moral culpability here of the occupation, I think, should be stated every time. So, not except for when Hamas did their initial brutal attack, wasn't necessarily the time to talk about that. And it's not a justification for that attack. That attack was brutal and awful and barbaric. But when you're talking about the big picture of what is going wrong in this region, there is one overwhelming answer. Millions of people are occupied in open air prisons, and they've been occupied for over 50 brutal years. You cannot justify that under any circumstance. You can't come and tell me, no, all Palestinians are savages, all Palestinians are anti-Semites. I don't like who they picked as their leader. They should pick the guy I want as their leader. And otherwise, I'm going to keep them under lock and key and with no rights, no nothing. And I'm going to bomb their civilians whenever I want. And I'm going to justify it. And then I'm going to cut off their water and electricity. If you think, and there's so many disingenuous people online now. Oh, it's not really an occupation. Oh, they let it go in 2005, 6, 7. Oh, and then they had the election in 7. So it's not an occupation. Who are you kidding? If you know you're occupied when you don't control your own water and electricity. That's the most obvious thing in the world, let alone your own borders, let alone having your own state. Israel, at some point, you have to let them go. If you don't,
they're not.
They're sorry, but that makes you the bad guys. So that doesn't mean vis-a-vis Hamas. It just means period. Period. When we invaded Iraq, America did, we were the bad guys. We invaded a country that did not attack us, and hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians died. That's on us, okay? When you do a brutal occupation of millions of people for 56 long, horrible years, that's on you. So stop making excuses and end the goddamn occupation.
All right, we've got more details about the ongoing war when we come back from the break, including updates on Biden's visit to the Middle East.
Back on TYT, I told you there was a lot of comments in this direction, so I'm gonna read a whole bunch as quickly as I can. Let's start with Super Chat. Kristen Eckert wrote in, no way was Anna too aggressive. That a-hole was trying to make her look like a nobody and made her feel small. People make me feel small a lot. Anna's a great role model for all women. Kristen, I hear you on that. The only thing that I would disagree with you on is it's not just women. You're right about women, you're right about yourself, you're right about Anna being an awesome role model for strong women who fight back. But a lot of people that are insiders and that are wealthy and that are powerful try to make a lot of us feel small. And I'm done with that crap. So yeah, try it here, see what happens. Well, Vivek did. He saw what happened. Okay, but Kristen, we fight for you, okay? So all of us together, we're a lot larger than them. All right, Moondragon writes, and I have to say that interview last night was epic. More candidates need to be called out for their horsish, as he put it. Mr. Charles writes in, you don't walk into Anna's house and disrespect her. What's your name? GTF out of here, Vivek.
But guys, honestly, look, I actually didn't care that he didn't know my name. I thought it was laughable that he was bragging about being someone who cares about detail, but then not doing his due diligence to like familiarize himself with the show before doing an interview on the show. You're running for president. You should probably do your research. But anyway, putting that aside, I'm more offended when people use our platform to insult your intelligence. okay? I'm not gonna let that happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 100%. Nicole Monroe wrote in, and I'm vacationing in rural Maine and found the last copy of Justice is Coming in a local bookstore. So now I have the audio and the hard copy, which I couldn't find back home in New Jersey. Thank you, Cenk and Anna, for being you. Nicole, thank you. I really appreciate you. Of course, you get more copies online at tyt.com/justice. But it is funny, like, I mean, you want to talk about feeling small and being outsiders, etc. Here's a book that people are feverishly looking for in bookstores, and like they want to buy the book. And the bookstores are like, we don't want it. Like what, the bookstores are doing great? They don't need to sell more books? So infuriating. I can't get out of my head that we sold enough to be in the top 15 and New York Times didn't put us in the top 15. That's just unreal. Okay, anyways, Anthony McClendon writes in, too aggressive, Anna, no way. Your questions last night were perfectly relevant and respectful. Vivek's responses were so slimy I had to stop watching every 15 minutes, take a shower and come back. Joseph Recupero wrote in, if you guys ever softball someone you're interviewing, I'll stop watching. I'm here to listen to the truth. I can't get that from mainstream media. Don't ever change. Challenge these MFers at every opportunity. Dami Mommy Matrix said, LMAO, I'm not here for flowers, sugars, and bubbles. I'm here for the salty queen line of questioning and Cenk's relentless and fair discussion / debate. Ted Cruz Wedgie Dragon says, I was very pleased with how you and Cenk interviewed Vivek. I know sometimes it could devolve into name calling, so I appreciated this interview. And so many more wrote in. I'll do it in the next break too. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Chet Lake, Caroline Brown, Gailey McDougall, S. Moto, Shelley Hoffman, Meredith Smith, Shelby, and Nemo. All those folks just became Young Turks members and hence do this show with us. We appreciate you, you get all of our content and we fight forward, giving you honest news and fighting for positive change in the world. So hit the join button below the video or tyt.com/join and come join TYT Nation and help us do those things. Casper.
Well, there are concerns that the war between Israel and Gaza will expand into a much larger war involving other countries, including Lebanon and Syria. We should be concerned about that. Let's talk about why.
2,000 US troops are now on a heightened alert to be ready to deploy to the region in a support, not combat role. They'd provide intelligence, logistics, and communication support, and some would beef up security at US installations throughout the region. The safety of hostages, missing Americans and civilians in Gaza, very much on the mind of the president and his team.
Clashes with the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon have been intensifying on Israel's northern border, leading to growing concerns and fears that the war in Gaza will trigger a wider Middle East war. Now, we'll get to the details about the US troops who are facing deployment in the region in just a moment. But before we do, an update on Gaza and the fate of the Palestinians. Now, Palestinian authorities say that the death toll has already reached 3,000 Palestinians. Just today, a hospital was struck with lots of argument about which airstrike led to that hospital being struck. The death toll is still increasing. We don't know exactly how many people have died as a result of that. It's anywhere between 200 at the lowest estimate and 500 at one of the highest estimates that we've seen in the press so far. But nonetheless, the situation is so bad that now Iran is saying, listen, we had nothing to do with the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians, but we're about to get involved if this war and this brutal treatment of Palestinians continues. And the fears intensified late Monday with a warning from the Iranian foreign minister, Hussein Amir Abdullahian, that Iran's militia allies in what it called the resistance front against Israel could take unspecified preemptive action to deter an Israeli assault on Gaza. Now, the likelihood that the war will spread to other fronts is approaching an unavoidable stage, he wrote on Monday on X, formerly known as Twitter, as Israel announced it had ordered the evacuation of 28 communities on its northern border. Now, over the past decade, Iran has built militias and proxies in countries including Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, in addition to Hamas. And all or any of them could be called on to open up new fronts. So there is a lot of concern, again, that if Israel continues the brutal treatment of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, this could encourage other countries to get involved. Iranian-backed groups in Iraq have warned that they will attack American interests in the country if the United States gets involved, and the Houthis in Yemen, another of Tehran's allies, have also made threats. Iranian-backed fighters in Syria, including Hezbollah forces there, would almost certainly join in. There have already been exchanges of fire along the Syrian border, and activists report that Iranian allied fighters have been relocating to southern Syria from the east of the country. This is no joke. This could quickly devolve into a much larger war, and we should absolutely be concerned about it. I know the Biden administration is concerned about it, and they've taken some actions to try to deter that from happening. But I should be clear in noting that there is no indication that the American government has, demanded a ceasefire or demanded Benjamin Netanyahu calm the situation down rather than continue escalating war with the Palestinians in Gaza.
Well, there's one indication. Biden is going to Israel, and the reporting says that he wants relief to be brought in. And if you think about it, he doesn't want to go there and come away empty-handed in terms of some sort of diplomacy to calm the situation down. So they're gonna have to give Biden something, and that presumably is some sort of relief for the Palestinians, especially given that Biden has been so strongly in favor of Israel so far and is looking to increase funding to Israel. They're gonna want to make some sort of concession. And so, and the reporting is indicating that the administration is asking for at least a small concession to get relief to the Palestinian civilians there, and that's good. That's a positive note by the administration.
Yes.
So now I want to talk about Iran's conundrum here and whether they were involved in the first place. So here's one piece of evidence that they were not. Intelligence officials are saying if they were trying to antagonize Israel by planning this with Hamas, then when Israel counterstruck with ferocity, that's when Iran would have triggered a series of militia attacks to try to get to a larger war and to suck Israel into that war, even if Israel doesn't want it. But they have not done that. So intelligence officials are telling reporters, it looks like Iran was caught a little off guard here and they don't want the wider war. So that's why they're trying to be careful here. But there's a reason why they might have to respond in their way of thinking, not in our way of thinking. I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, in fact, let me shed more light on the allegations that Iran was involved in the terror attacks that Hamas carried out against Israeli civilians a little over a week ago. So basically, the one source that had reported that was the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal put out a news story indicating that Iran was planning that attack with Hamas. But that report was not corroborated. And in fact, Semaphore recently reported that there are some conflicts happening amongst Wall Street journalists over the decision to publish that report, knowing that the details were murky to say the least. Some are calling this the Wall Street Journal's Judith Miller moment. And I think those are some strong words, and I would definitely agree with it. We just need a little more evidence, and then I'd feel comfortable. For those who are unfamiliar with Judith Miller and her role in rallying support for the preemptive war in Iraq, Cenk, I remember you doing excellent coverage on that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so she was a New York Times reporter, and they kept feeding her fake intelligence. And since she was getting scoops from the US government, she felt really proud, and it helped her career. And the New York Times, to me, was way more culpable as an organization than just Judith Miller. Any rando reporter can get leaks from the government. It's your job as editors and publishers to be more careful. But they printed that stuff on the front page day after day after day, and it made it seem like Iraq was had something to do with attacking us on 9/11, had weapons of mass destruction, all these things. And everything that was by actual intelligence sources with real intelligence was buried in A17, A27 in the back of the paper. And that is why when we attacked Iraq, 69% of Americans, 7 out of 10 Americans thought that Saddam Hussein had personally attacked us on 9/11. That's why they were in favor of the war, because they thought Iraq attacked us. When they found out that Iraq had not attacked us many years later, then public opinion changed. That's why these reporters are so important oftentimes. So now you've got BS leaks going, it appears, going to the Wall Street Journal. And by the way, I said this when I was on with Ben Glebe. A couple of days later, Wall Street Journal began to walk that back, saying, some people say this is what happened, right? So you have to be very careful with these leaks, because every leak has some agenda that they're trying to push. And sometimes it's getting out the truth as a whistleblower, and sometimes it's just making your own political case with a reporter who wants to get famous. And a publication like Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, who was pushed for the Iraq war, pushed for now seemingly pushing for the war against Iran. There isn't a war that Rupert Murdoch didn't want to make love to. So it's the least surprising thing on earth that a Murdoch paper would give you questionable intelligence, pushing you further into ridiculous, absurd, disastrous wars.
Now, if Iran-backed Hezbollah enters this war, I really want everyone to understand just how disastrous that would be, especially for civilians in the region. Hezbollah has amassed between 130,000 and 150,000 rockets and missiles aimed at Israel, some of which could reach deep into Israeli cities or be used to deliver precision strikes against Israeli military facilities, such as air bases, curtailing Israel's fighting capabilities. Again, just really want to emphasize how Benjamin Netanyahu's actions and his orders for the IDF in the Gaza Strip are not only brutal toward Palestinian civilians, it's brutal in regard to the future safety of Israeli citizens, because it is goading others to join this war. A full-scale war with Lebanon could turn Gaza into a sideshow, says Faris Maksad, a senior fellow at the Washington-based Middle East Institute, bringing a level of destruction and bloodshed to Israeli civilians unseen in all of the country's wars. What Hezbollah has in military hardware and capability dwarfs Hamas in Gaza. Now, the Biden administration is doing what it can to de-escalate the situation and essentially implement deterrence in order to deter Iran and Hezbollah from joining this war. So that happened that's partially happening with the deployment of 2,000 US troops. I want to be clear that these are not combat troops. That's really important to keep in mind. These are troops who are going to be sent to the region to provide assistance. That does worry me to some extent, but there are also aircraft carriers that have been deployed to the region as well as a deterrent to discourage both Hezbollah and Iran from joining this war. Now, with that said, the Israeli government says that they refuse to allow in any humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip until Hamas release the hostages. And what's really interesting is that NBC and other news outlets are reporting that Hamas is now ready and willing to release the hostages, but they have some conditions in place. So let's take a look at the first video about that, and then we'll explain the conditions that they're demanding.
So yesterday, the top spokesman for the military wing of Hamas made an offer, a dangle. He said that the group is willing to hand over all foreign hostages if the airstrikes. Well, what he said specifically is he said they were willing to hand over all foreign hostages if the conditions on the field are right, if the conditions are appropriate. So I spoke to a short while ago a senior Hamas official inside Gaza, and I asked for clarification. I said, are you still willing to release foreign hostages? And what do you mean that you would do it if the field conditions are right? And he said that not only are they willing to release all foreign hostages, meaning even Israelis who have second passports, but also all Israeli civilians if the bombings stop.
So Hamas is saying if the bombing stops, we will release the hostages. Israel is saying, no, we're gonna keep going until you release the hostages. So to me, it really does seem as though the hostages are no longer, or never really were a priority. They kind of come in second when it comes to rooting out Hamas in their minds.
Yeah, I have a nuanced opinion on that. I think that Israel's in a really tough spot with the hostage situation because you're going to take Hamas's word for it. Where you're going to stop bombing for how long? When do they turn over the hostages? So you'd have to really get in there and negotiate and be a lot more clear on the order of things. All right, give me half the hostages and I'll stop bombing. And then if I stop bombing for a week or whatever, you give me the other half. Well, some sort of deal where both sides can verify, right? So you can't just take somebody's word for it because you heard it on a news story that Hamas is promising maybe to release the hostages. So I have sympathy for Israel there. That's a tough spot to be in. On the other hand, as we've said from day one of the counterattack, I don't see how bombing the buildings helps the hostages. I don't see how cutting off water and electricity helps the hostages. If anything, all three of those things could really hurt the hostages. Exactly. It might even kill the hostages because they don't really know where they are at all. So I think it's incredibly hard to find those hostages. I mean, you would have to lose so many lives, both IDF soldiers, Hamas for whatever that's worth, but Palestinian civilians to be able to find. And how are you going to find? Maybe you find 10 of them, 20 of them, 199 of them dispersed throughout Gaza, even though Gaza is still a small place. That is very, very, very difficult. So,
right.
So they got to. My point is, at the end of the day, they have to make a deal, and I get it that they need to verify the deal. They need to have leverage for the deal. I understand all those realities on the ground, but at some point, both sides have to make a deal on the hostages at a minimum.
So when we come back from the break, we're going to focus solely on the hostage situation. There is an expert who has negotiated hostage situations with Israel in the past, and he has an interesting perspective on all of this. So we'll share that story and more with you when we return. Don't miss it.
All right, guys, back during the social break here. Let me read YouTube members first in this case. Screed Hart wrote in, I've been too strong since 2007. I'm never going back. Love you, thank you, appreciate you. Luke Antunes wrote in, I loved how Anna did not back down. Vivek showed how much of a true misogynist he is. Trisha Briggs wrote in, I highly, highly enjoyed the interview last night. You both killed it, thank you. And we appreciate all you guys writing in with this. Miguel Quiroz wrote in, I need to know, is Anna got a little gift / appreciation note from Rami last night as a thank you for the interview. LMAO, loved it. Miguel, I don't know that we got that yet, but thank you. Now let me go to Twitch. Ogamel wrote in, respect the heck out of you, Anna. Love how you do things. Gato Man 196 says, I love the Salt Queen. Sortium says, what? You are not too aggressive, Anna. Whenever I punch a word, that means they capitalized it. That interview was refreshing. His BS about not knowing your name, your backhand slam about him not preparing for the interview after saying he's focused on the detail was chef's kiss. Called out his BS as real journalists should.
Thank you.
Now we're going to our member section on tyt.com. Mecca Squirrelzilla writes in, I just checked Barnes & Noble website and Justice is Coming is showing as available in the hardcover, ebook, and audio. I try to support Barnes & Noble when I can because I prefer brick and mortar stores. By the way, I do the same thing. Shame there are no smaller bookstores nearby. So guys, I hear you on that. Remember, you could always get it online. That's not a question. The reason I would love to see it in the bookstores is because then non-TYT fans can see it and go, oh, what is this? Oh, progressive's taking over the country, really? Oh, and I'm gonna love it? Let me check this out for a second. That's what you want, and that's what other authors get. They get that, the ability to reach people that don't know them. So I love that you guys are buying it online. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. tyt.com/justice to get it. But I extra appreciate you guys asking the stores, can you please carry it? Like, I want to buy it, others want to buy it, can you carry it? Anyways, now back to Israel. I think this is Mountain Chaos. I've read it as before. One of our members saying, Cenk, Anna, be careful, your bias against Israel is showing really bad. Yeah, no, I'm gonna tell you something. There's no bias against Israel in terms of, am I against Israel? No, I want Israel to be in great shape, perfectly peaceful, wonderful. I want everybody to love Israel, go to Israel, etc. But am I biased against their government actions? Well, that's not bias, that's just my opinion. Yes, the occupation is 100% wrong. Am I biased against America for thinking that the Iraq war was 100% wrong? Am I biased against Turkey for thinking 90% of what Erdogan is doing is completely wrong? What they did to the Kurds was completely wrong? No, that's not bias against the country. That is just your opinion about an issue. But of course we want to protect Israel and the civilians in Israel, etc.
Listen, even MSNBC of all places is pouring cold water on the claim that it was, Islamic Jihad rocket, considering the damage that was done to the hospital itself. Those rockets can't do that kind of damage.
Back on Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but also Anton Rourke, Bruce Salazar, and Zane Pasma. Every member does this show with us, so we appreciate you guys. You could do likewise by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube or tyt.com/join. And guys, next segment I'm going to read more of your comments asking us to have more Palestinian voices on. So I see you. We'll get to that later in the show. Go ahead, Anna.
All right, well, we have an update on the hostage situation in Gaza. So let's talk a little bit about what we know about one of the hostages who has been recorded on film and released to the public.
Tonight, the first video of a hostage held inside Gaza, released by Hamas. In it, 21-year-old Maya Shem asks to be brought home as soon as possible and says she's being given medical care. It's unclear if she's being forced to make the statement.
Shem was one of the Israelis who was kidnapped at the Nova Festival near the Gaza Strip after Hamas fighters launched a terror attack on October 7th that so far killed at least 1,400 Israelis. Now here's more on Shem and the video released by Hamas.
For the first time, video of one of the 199 hostages taken into Gaza. Hamas, the militant group behind the brazen attack on October 7th, releasing video of 21-year-old French-Israeli citizen Mia Shem. Her family giving us permission to show these images. She was kidnapped with many others from the music festival. I just ask that you'll bring me home as soon as possible to my family, she says, to my parents, to my brothers. Please get us out of here as soon as possible. Overnight, her family speaking out.
I saw my baby on television. I saw she's alive. I didn't know if she's dead or alive until yesterday. All I knew is that she's might be kidnapped. I'm begging the world to bring my baby back home.
Now that was her mother, Karen. She said that she had heard all sorts of rumors about what had happened to her daughter ahead of time. She's told CNN, quote, I heard before rumors that she was shot in the shoulder or in the leg, so I can see she was shot in her shoulder. I see she had an operation. She looks very terrified. She looks like she is in big pain, and I can see that she says what they tell her to say. Now, there are serious concerns about the hostages who are held captive in the Gaza Strip. There are estimated to be anywhere between 199 and now new reports indicate that there are as many as 250 Israeli hostages. Well, hostages, not all of them are Israeli. Some of them are actually foreign hostages who happen to be in Israel at the time of this attack. But there are some serious concerns that Israel might not be prioritizing the hostages at the moment, considering the humanitarian blockade, the blockade from any water entering the area, which obviously not only impacts the Palestinian civilians, but it impacts the hostages who are in the Gaza Strip at the moment. And there was an interesting comment made by an expert who has been tasked with negotiating hostage situations. He had a perspective here that I think is worth sharing with you all, so let's take a look.
To start a dialogue with Hamas, we have to understand who can do it. And the ones who can do it are the countries that have influence over Hamas, which are Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt, and Iran.
Baskin says there's a small window of opportunity to make a deal to release hostages.
It's a matter of days, probably a week, before the Israeli ground forces go into Gaza. That's when the window for negotiation closes.
But that means that hostages are sacrificed.
It means that hostages are going to be tried to be freed, and they might be sacrificed. My sense of the pulse of the Israeli public right now, the government and the military, is that the primary objective today is to remove Hamas from its ability to govern. And that means that hostages may be sacrificed. This hurts me so much to say that the hostages might be considered additional casualties of the war for Israel's survival.
Obviously, that's devastating. And keep in mind that many of those hostages are in need of medical attention. That's according to officials who have more information about who these individual hostages are, including a 9-month-old baby who clearly doesn't have access to formula, and other individuals, elderly people who are suffering from kidney disease and need dialysis. It's just absolutely devastating.
Yeah. So the governments of the world take advantage sometimes of media's inability to state something clearly. So we talked about that earlier in the hour in regards to the hospital bombing in Gaza. But there was an excellent example of it from the first clip that we showed you from Lester Holt. If you notice at the end, he said about the hostage video, quote, unclear if she's being forced to make that statement. No, Lester, it's perfectly clear. Of course she's being forced to make that statement. She's a hostage of Hamas. There is, you don't have to bother saying there's a 0.00001% chance that maybe she voluntarily made a video. She's like, oh, Hamas, can I make a video? And she wanted to make a video, and the fact that she's a hostage didn't play a role. It's absurd. Yes, of course she was forced to make it. So just please, you can state things clearly from time to time. All right, so now back to the main issue. Look, there's this, what I view to be an insane line of thinking that unfortunately, apparently the Israeli government thinks is possible, and I've seen people saying it as if it's possible. We're going to keep hitting Gaza until we eliminate Hamas's ability to govern. What does that mean? What do you think, they're just gonna give up? Like we all call them a terrorist group. After they won that one election, they didn't allow any more elections and then ruled in a dictatorial way. I mean, that's the nature of not having elections. So you think that those guys, the guys who just did the barbaric attack on Israel, are gonna turn around and go, oh, you're right, we can't govern anymore. We'll let someone else do it. Do you think that there's gonna be a random uprising of moderate Palestinians that are somehow going to get enough military goods from who to fight back against Hamas in the streets and then govern the Palestinians? Has anybody thought about this for 1 second? There's no chance that's gonna happen. That's an absurd thing to say. The only reason you'd say that is just to say, well, I don't want an end date on this. I don't want a real objective. I just want to punish them. Collective punishment, hell yeah. And we're gonna teach them a lesson. All they understand is violence. That's the real objective. And the fact that you can't just take that one guess opinion for it, but there is a legitimate school of thought that he represents that says that apparently some in the Israeli government are saying, forget the hostages. Let's just punish them, punish the Palestinians so they don't do it again. The idea that a real military objective is that Hamas cannot govern anymore is not a thing. It's just made up. It has no logical connection to reality, and there is no pathway to get there, and no one can define when we'll get there. Wait, okay, go ahead, Netanyahu's government, tell me, when can you determine that Hamas no longer has the ability to govern? That's such an absurdly vague statement anyway, it's not even provable. So this is just vengeance, and I get the desire for vengeance, but that's not what governments should do, and that's not what governments we support should do, especially against civilians, and mainly against civilians, and that's what's happening here.
We got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour, we're going to talk about other news, including the ongoing embarrassing speakership fight among Republicans in the House of Representatives. Don't miss it.
Indisputable, exclusive, disputable, exclusive. We brought you this first. No other news agency has this video. No other news agency has this story.
Every week on Indisputable, we do original, exclusive, investigative reporting you'll find nowhere else.
Our reports have been viewed by millions. Hosted by Sean King, Ben Crump, Senator John Ossoff.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
We catching these cases on camera. Just imagine the things that we don't see.
Our groundbreaking investigations and exclusive interviews bring you the real voices no one else wants you to hear. We tell the stories.
Imagine a prison that is so racist, the corrections officers contact me. That is a life or death situation being created. A black woman who was driving for Uber was allegedly assaulted by a white male passenger. After we got involved, roughly 24 hours later, the police all of a sudden opened up an investigation. What was going through your mind when bullets were simply flying inside of your vehicle?
Honestly, I thought I was going to die.
Did these officers ever say that you fit the description of somebody they were looking for? Did they say that?
Never.
Okay, that means they lied.
And we want you to be part of our truth-telling movement. Send pictures and video of stories no one else is telling and a 1 or 2 paragraph summary of the story to Indisputable's exclusive tip line at indvideos@tyt.com.
If you have more information about what's happening at this particular facility, please let me know.
Together, we're challenging the system, and together, we're making a difference.
I have the entire background to this story, and it is going to make your blood boil.
Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, unveiling the truth, empowering the people. Weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific.
All right, let me do a little quick plug here. It's not even a plug, I'm bragging, okay? I'm bragging, watch me. We have a channel on YouTube, a whole channel devoted just to the Young Turks. It's badass, right? Wow, man. I can see the voice.
You guys are rock stars.
Unbelievable. Senator Sanders, welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Man, you guys are amazing. We gave you what you wanted. Okay. Speaking of shirts.
I have a surprise.
You reached a lot of people. You are the Young Turks. And we have spread that progressive message wide and far. Let's keep it going. We've been around for about 20 years and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades. Cool news, shopdyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're gonna be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course!
course. Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's a fantastic story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream.
USA, USA, USA.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
Well, we begin with the ongoing drama and infighting among Republicans in the House of Representatives.
The total number of votes cast is 432, of which the Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 200 votes. The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212 votes. No person having received a majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected.
The United States government and Congress in particular is incredibly embarrassing. Today is another day that provides ample proof of that, as 20 House Republicans rejected Jim Jordan's bid for Speaker in the first round of voting earlier today. And it's unclear he'll even be able to clinch these votes anytime soon. They are expecting a second vote tomorrow. Now, among the 20 holdouts were Don Bacon, Kay Granger, Mike Lawler, and Ken Buck. We're talking about Republicans here. And Jordan did need 217 of the 221 GOP caucus members to vote for him, but obviously he was only able to secure 210. Now, Hakeem Jeffries got more votes than he did with 212. Obviously, Democrats voted for Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat, for Speaker. Now, Representative Elise Stefanik said that she nominated Jordan for Speaker on the House floor, arguing that he is a patriot, an American first warrior who wins the toughest of fights. But he hasn't won this fight, at least not yet. 6 Republicans voted instead for Kevin McCarthy, and another 7 voted for Steve Scalise, the #2 House Republican whose own bid for Speaker fell apart last week. 3 Republicans voted for Lee Zeldin, who retired from Congress in January, and Republican Representatives Tom Cole, Tom Emmer, Thomas Massey got 1 vote each. Now, McCarthy and Scalise did vote in favor of Jim Jordan, but Politico reports that the Republicans who bucked Jordan are largely in 3 categories: those in vulnerable districts, defense hawks with concerns about military spending, and appropriators wary of Jordan's history of voting against spending bills. But the biggest common theme among the detractors here is a firm distrust for the Freedom Caucus aligned wing of the GOP. This is the more far right wing of the Republican Party. So we've got some more details, including what Democrats had proposed, but it appears that had been rejected. We'll get to that in just a moment. But Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Looks like every Tom, Dick, and Harry got a vote. That's an old school saying. There's 3 times I got a vote. All right, we're moving on.
It's not that old school.
I think it's a little old school. All right, so what's now old school is Republicans not being able to find a leader because they just cannot agree. Look, I'm in a unique camp here where I kind of like the disagreement, but not because the Republicans are fighting, but because they're having real disagreements about how to govern.
Are they?
Well, I think that they partly are. So here, let's talk about the part where they are. So the people that voted against Jim Jordan, 20 of them, Anna explained the 3 categories they were in. 2 of the categories have a lot of guys that I can't stand. Now, Jim Jordan is terrible on social issues. Well, he's terrible on every issue, okay? But that doesn't mean that the guys on the other side of him in the Republican Party are good guys. They're not. 2 of those categories were the appropriators. Well, okay, there could be some moderates in there that are fine people. Overall, though, they're the guys who are giving all the corporate pork to their donors. And then the guys who want to do more military spending, they're totally in the pocket of the defense contractors. So I got no love for them. The ones in the vulnerable districts, have to pretend to be more moderate from time to time. Okay, that's fine. I'd rather have one of them win.
Let's discuss that briefly, because Ken Buck, one of these Republicans who is not in favor of Jim Jordan, made an appearance on CNN, and I thought what he had to say was fascinating, and it really does show the conundrum that the Republican Party is dealing with in an era where Donald Trump is still, whether they like it or not, considered the leader of their party. So for the Republicans running for re-election in purple districts, or actually more importantly, in states that Biden handily won, they're concerned that if they vote in favor of Jim Jordan, someone who aided and abetted the big lie about the 2020 presidential election, well, then they're gonna have a much tougher time getting re-elected. These are people in the districts who voted for Biden, who have no patience for the election-related lies coming from the Trump wing of the Republican Party. And so it's a political liability for them. Everything they do is a political calculation. They don't really care about right and wrong, what the morality is. They're making a calculation that supporting someone like Jim Jordan, who is a lapdog for Donald Trump, will not be politically advantageous for them.
Yeah, 100%. But at the end of the day, I want them to make that calculation, right? That's how you get to the right result, is you say, well, you might lose your seat, so you better vote the right way. And in this case, voting the right way is not to vote for Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is one of the most extreme members of the House of my lifetime, not just of now. He's an inveterate liar. All he ever does is lie. He lied about the 2020 election. He lied, by the way, about his personal situation. Elise Stefanik made everybody like go, out loud, gasp out loud in Congress when she referred to his days on the wrestling mat, because of course there's that controversy where he covered up for someone who, the charges are that he covered up for someone who was sexually molesting the boys on the team. There's Ohio State, so they're college kids. And look, by the way, I mean that's covering for a groomer. Imagine if a Democrat ran for Speaker of the House with that background, the Republicans would have ripped his face off. The Democrats have barely said a word about that. But okay, so that's one of the many, many ways that Jim Jordan is incredibly extreme. And if you're worried that you're in a vulnerable district and your district might not like someone who's a radical right winger who hates our democracy, yeah, you should vote against them. Otherwise, you should lose your seat. Exactly how democracy works.
Now, while some might be making savvy political calculations, others within the Republican Party are not. In fact, some of them have made admissions that they probably should not have made, but it does give you a sense of why they vote the way they do in some cases. So Representative Kelly Armstrong of North Dakota said that he voted in favor of Jim Jordan for the following reasons. He's the best person to keep us out of a government shutdown, and the best person to keep conservative media off our backs as we face a shutdown. So look, it's not confirmed what he's referring to, but we can certainly speculate, because some reports indicate that Fox News host Sean Hannity, who is a Trump lapdog for sure, has been basically reaching out to Republican lawmakers, urging them to support Trump ally Jim Jordan. Okay, so the email cites the budget, Ukraine, and Israel, and asked, please let us know when Representative Blank plans on opening the People's House so work can be done. So this was an email sent by a Hannity producer to apply pressure on Republican members of Congress to support Jim Jordan for the role. Hannity also personally contacted at least one member directly to urge them to vote for Jordan. Last night, Sean defended, I should say, his involvement and had some pretty strong words for Republicans who took issue with it. Let's take a look.
And why is it a shock to certain lawmakers and members of the media mob, all of you out there, that yours truly, a member of the press, is daring to ask elected representatives, the so-called public servants in this country, if and when they plan to wrap up this speaker battle and reopen the People's House amid growing chaos? But I do have to chuckle that a few of my questions, simple questions that I asked to some Republicans over the weekend about the importance of getting a speaker as soon as possible, showed we have a few sensitive little snowflakes in Congress. I offer no apologies for doing my job and seeking answers from those elected public servants.
Yeah, members of the media should not be using their platforms like to basically pressure these politicians to support your preferred, individual. Like, look,
I don't agree.
Yeah, you're right. We do engage in pressure ourselves, but look, I think a better way of framing it is Hannity's going to do what he's going to do. But I do find it fascinating that you have members of Congress, okay, people who have been elected into their positions, cowering and showing how fearful they are in regard to members of the media. You got elected to serve the best interests of the people in your district. Are you gonna do that or not? Or are you just gonna cave to pressure from Hannity?
Yeah, well, look, I get it on all fronts. First of all, Hannity does a talk show. He's conservative, he doesn't hide that he's a conservative. And so he's pushing for what he thinks is his agenda. I got no problems with that. And Anna's right, I do that. We wanted to pass $15 minimum wage. We asked you guys to put pressure on Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, and everyone else to try to put that in the bill and get it passed. So I don't begrudge that. And then for the politicians who are afraid of Sean Hannity and the rest of conservative media, because Hannity is just a figurehead. They're like the talk show hosts online, the radio hosts, et cetera. They do a lot more damage in your districts, in my opinion. And so, well, yeah, but they're the ones telling your voters which side you're on. So I get that media is a giant part of politics. So that's how this game is played. But look, guys, that's why I said in the beginning, I think that these policy differences are interesting and important, and I think it's positive that the Republicans air them out. So some of the Republicans say, I don't care about democracy. I like that Trump tried to do a coup. I tried to help him with his coup. I didn't mind the fake elector plot. Next time we'll get more fake electors and we'll end this goddamn government. And a couple of the Republicans are saying, no, I like democracy. I don't want to put someone in charge who lies about elections, tries to steal elections, and commits coups on behalf of Donald Trump. And if I'm caught supporting Donald Trump, forget Sean Hannity, Donald Trump, in my district, I'm gonna lose. So I'm not gonna do that, right? And that makes sense. They should have that fight, they should sort it out, and they should get to an answer. The Democratic Party doesn't allow any dissent. It's more authoritarian. And so our differences bubble and bubble and bubble, but they have no release valve at all. I don't know what's gonna happen with our differences, but progressives are not allowed to dissent, and then they bow their heads.
Look, I don't know how this is all gonna play out, and let me just preface what I'm about to say by acknowledging that Kevin McCarthy is a difficult figure to trust. But with that said, there was some possibility that if Democrats were willing to vote in favor of Kevin McCarthy maintaining his speakership role, maybe there could have been a situation in which concessions could be made on behalf of Democrats who do not have control of the House of Representatives right now. But I don't even think they entertain that. And I do have an issue with that because the outcome of all of this could be, we don't know yet, but it could be a House Speaker who's far more extreme than Kevin McCarthy. Someone like Jim Jordan, for instance. But look, I could be wrong. McCarthy broke his promises to his own conference. So
and to Biden and to the Democrats.
True. So I don't begrudge Democrats for being, distrusting toward McCarthy, but there could have maybe been an opportunity there. And honestly, what my fear is that McCarthy will be replaced with someone like Jordan or possibly even more extreme.
Well, look, it's not like this thing's over. If Democrats had any kind of, initiative, Hakeem Jeffries could go back to McCarthy and say, hey brother, why don't we bring you back? Give me paid family leave, let's just vote on it, okay? And then you get the speakership and we're done with this thing. And then that way it's unbreakable because you've got the Democrats and plenty of Republicans voting for you. So if you wanna just get tarred and feathered and run out of town, that's currently what's happening to you. And you're never gonna get power back and your career is over right now. I could rescue your career and the majority of Republicans would actually vote with you. And all you gotta do is give me a vote on paid family leave. You don't even have to vote for it, right? So that way we'd be like, holy cow, look at Hakeem Jeffries, what a deal maker. And at least we got something that a huge percentage of the country agrees with, and at least we can fight for it, et cetera. But Democrats never take any initiative.
Well, I think my read of this is that the Democrats have made their own political calculation, and they plan on running for re-election by pointing to how dysfunctional the Republican Party is with their infighting, which is why, conservative media hosts have their hair on fire over this.
And one last thing for me. Look, you have to always remember that almost all politicians are liars. So, and you will see it with your own eyes going forward. So I like to lay down markers for what's going to happen, okay? So either the Republicans are going to do well in the next election, and if that happens, all of these guys, including the 20 guys who dissented, etc., will become the biggest Trump MAGA supporters you've ever seen. They're gonna tell you that, Jim Jordan was right about everything. Matt Gaetz is their new leader. They don't care. They don't have any principles. They just care about power, fame, and money, okay? On the other hand, if the Republicans get shellacked in the next election, all of a sudden you'll find out that all of these same guys were super moderates. Because then they'll realize, oh my God, we had it. They could easily win this next election. And if they don't, they're gonna realize it was because they were too extreme. At some point, that's gonna click in their heads, especially if Trump loses the next election. At which point, they will all pretend to be moderates in order to keep their seats, because they don't wanna get washed out. That's how this game is played. Politicians, generally speaking, don't actually have principles or ideas or anything they care about other than their own ego.
When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about a partial gag order that has been implemented against Donald Trump in his election interference trial. We've got that story and more, don't miss it.
All right, back on TYT. So let's go to members here. Urban Hermit asks, is there room for nuance between hostage and prisoner? It's an interesting question because Hamas takes hostages, IDF takes some prisoners, and I would call others that they take hostages. And so what's the difference? A prisoner is someone who actually did something wrong. And are there members of Hamas that actually did something wrong that IDF arrests? Yes, those are actually prisoners. Has the IDF arrested way too many people, including innocent people? Well, by definition, if they're guilty, then you should arrest them. Have they arrested innocent people and done that in a way so they could exchange them later, so they could create power, leverage, etc.? Yes. So some of the IDF detainees are prisoners, and I would categorize some of them as partly hostages. And look, we still have hostages in Guantanamo Bay. We never let some of those guys go. They're still there, even though we still know some of them are innocent. It's insane. So that's some nuance there for you. All right. Cray Cray Souffle said we should be hearing more from Palestine reporters so we can have both points of view. Stephen Garcia agrees with you. Anna and Cenk, is there a reason we can't get well-established Palestinian voices like Dina Takuri, Ahmed Eldon, Abby Martin, or Mohammed El Kurd, who I imagine would welcome the opportunity to share their views? I believe in what we do with TYT, but the optics aren't great if we're not getting Palestinian voices here. Meanwhile, we've had a clearly pro-Israeli voice like Ben Gleibon twice now. And Stephen and others wrote in yesterday, I saw that as well, we just didn't get to the comments, and said they appreciate hearing from Ben, but we should hear from Palestinian voices too. Guys, there's two things about that. Number one, yes, we're gonna ask those folks, some of those folks to come on for sure, okay? So we hear you guys and we're addressing that, but there is a distinction. Ben is already one of our hosts. You're asking us to bring a guest on, no problem, okay? But our hosts all have their different opinion. Ben happens to be also Israeli, have family in Israel, etc. But it's his perspective as one of our hosts. So it's a little bit apples and oranges, but still, we'll get more oranges here. And as you can tell, we're trying super hard to be unbiased here and give the point of view of both sets of civilians. Chaos Dragon writes in, great interview, TYT. Loved you challenging Vivek on his views. Also have to give Vivek some credit. He actually stood up for his positions and only tried to evade a couple of times. Don't agree with a lot of his views, but brave to come on to TYT, so I have to give him some credit there. I always give credit to anybody that comes on TYT because we do really tough interviews. And the guy that I mentioned off in that context is Ro Khanna. I mean, he has come on here and we have had some near borderline shouting matches, but he keeps coming back and making a great case and fighting for progressive issues. So I appreciate him. And there was others in the campaign, Tim Ryan and others who, understood that's what an interview looks like. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Malika, Sherry Smale, John 64, and Kyle McReynolds. And Kyle wrote in, finally a supporter, love you all, tried for last year and was finally able to get you to take my payment. Well, we appreciate you trying so hard, Kyle. That's awesome. So you can do like they did and hit the join button, or you can go to tyt.com/join. Come be part of honest reporting and positive change in the world. Anna.
All right, Donald Trump is now dealing with a gag order. Let's talk about it.
And they're getting beaten very badly by me in the polls. They think the only way they can catch me is to stop me from speaking. They want to take away my voice. And a judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that on speech?
Former President Donald Trump reacted to a gag order he's been issued while speaking to his supporters in Clive, Iowa. Now, at the request of prosecutors, the partial gag order was issued by US District Judge Tanya Chutkan in advance of Trump's election interference trial. But let's keep it real, it's pretty impossible to try to control a man with a true gift of gab because he can't help himself. And he immediately decided to attack the judge after the partial gag order was issued. Now we'll get to the rest of his speech and what he had to say about the gag order in just a moment. But first, let's get to the details of the gag order itself and why I think it's actually gonna be pretty difficult to enforce. I'll explain why in a minute. The gag order will prohibit all parties from statements publicly targeting special counsel Jack Smith, his staff, Chutkan's staff, or any other court personnel. Now, I assume that would also include the judge herself. Now, statements about the families of those individuals are absolutely prohibited as well. But this is not a strong gag order. What do I mean by that? There are all sorts of exceptions to it, so let's get to those exceptions. In not restricting Trump's criticism of Washington, D.C. or its residents, the judge said, to the extent that Mr. Trump continues to cast aspersions, those statements will be considered in any change of venue motion that his lawyers might file. But further, the judge said, I will not impose restrictions on statements criticizing the government, the Biden administration, or the Department of Justice, or statements that Trump believes this prosecution to be politically motivated. So he can go ahead and continue arguing that it is a politically motivated trial. The judge also tried to walk a fine line on criticism on potential witnesses, such as Trump's former vice president and current political opponent, Mike Pence. I will prohibit statements about potential witnesses or the subject of their testimony. If he wants to criticize Mr. Pence, he may do so, but he may not criticize Mr. Pence about the events in this case. Without this restriction, there is a real risk that other witnesses may be intimidated or other witnesses may be reluctant to come forward lest they be subject to the same harassment or intimidation. And she's right about that, which is why the prosecutors had asked for this gag order to begin with. And she's also barring Trump and all parties from making statements about the witnesses in the case. Trump can argue that this prosecution is politically motivated, the judge said, but he cannot disparage the prosecutor by calling him a thug or vilify and implicitly encourage violence against public servants who are simply doing their jobs. Now, despite the, I think, multiple loopholes that are implemented in this gag order, Donald Trump just doesn't care, and he feels that he is being muzzled as a result of the partial gag order, which is why he said this while speaking to his supporters in Iowa.
A judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that on speech? Which I believe is totally unconstitutional what she did. A judge gave a gag order. A judge doesn't like me too much. Her whole life is not liking me. But she gave a gag order. You know what a gag order is? You can't speak badly about your opponent. But this is weaponry all being done because Joe Biden is losing the election and losing very, very badly to all of us in the polls. He's losing badly. But what they don't understand is that I am willing to go to jail if that's what it takes for our country to win and become a democracy again.
Now, that last statement is one that I question. Would he really be willing to go to jail? So, by the way, legal experts, including Barbara McQuaid, who's with the University of Michigan, said, Judge Chutkan said she will impose sanctions for violations, but if Trump does not respond to monetary sanctions, she has to be prepared to cancel his bond and jail him at some point. When push comes to shove, I don't know if that would actually happen. That's my read of it, but
yeah. So that creates a really interesting situation, and that's going to put the justice system to some degree of test here. We'll get to that in a second. So first, this is a mismatch, guys, because Trump is not even running against a political opponent here. He's really fighting the prosecutors, the judge, etc. And political opponents theoretically would campaign against him. But a prosecutor can't, and a judge won't. That's not their job. Their job is to just bring the case forward and adjudicate the case, right? So they're not going to go on a marketing spree explaining what a gag order is. They're just going to make their statements and go home, right? But then Trump's going to go out there 200 times. He's like, gag order means you're not allowed to criticize your opponent. That's not true. You just 100% lied about that. She said in the order that you could criticize your opponent. And she explained it with great detail. Like, if you mean Biden, you could criticize him all day long. He's got nothing to do with this case. If you mean like Mike Pence, as if he's really your opponent in the primary, you can criticize him all you like about every other issue under the sun. You can't just say you just can't say anything about this case regarding Mike Pence. And he says, gag orders are unconstitutional. And of course, every right wing is going to believe that. But that's not even close to true. Of course, it's not unconstitutional. Gag orders are done all the time. For example, when a mobster is under prosecution, and he goes, so maybe Tony wouldn't like it if we came over to his house, and maybe his wife and kids wouldn't like it either. Yeah, the judge can put a gag order on him and say, you're not allowed to say that. You're obviously threatening the witnesses. That's not unconstitutional to say that, okay? Gag orders have been done, I don't know, maybe in the millions of times, certainly in the thousands of times here in America. But he just makes up one load of crap after another, after another, after another. He's a habitual liar. And the prosecution and the judge are never going to be able to keep up with that. So by the end of this process, 40% of the country will be absolutely convinced that they took unconstitutional against this poor action, against this poor victim, and they were trying to get him Muslim so he couldn't speak out against Joe Biden. Joe Biden made the judge do it, etc. No, none of that is true. But is the gag order going to work?
No.
No.
No, right? It's not going to work. I mean, he immediately started attacking the judge.
I know, but to be fair, I don't think Trump broke the gag order yet. I saw some people saying that on TV, but I analyzed what he said. Maybe I missed something, but he can attack the judge. The judge did not include herself in the gag order.
You don't think she's part of court staff?
No, she said specifically that she's not part of it.
Okay,
all
right.
So that was my understanding, but from what I read. And he's allowed to attack Biden, DC, etc. You're just not allowed to intimidate witnesses and staff and prosecutors. And that's the most reasonable order you can have, but he's gonna steamroll past that. Eventually he'll go back to hitting the witnesses and the prosecutor, and then she's gonna be put to a decision. Are you really gonna lock him up?
No, she's not.
We'll see. Oh, by the way, you know, regular people think that there's some chance that Trump is going to be in prison before the election.
Guys,
so I need you to understand, please have normal expectations. Even if he lost these cases, he's gonna appeal. He's not gonna just go straight to jail, right?
He's already appealing this gag order, his legal team is. So we'll see how that plays out. But I have to end with Jason Miller's comment about who he believes is behind the partial gag order. It's just really, it makes me reminisce about the Obama era where everything was blamed on Obama. Thanks, Obama. So Miller said, another partisan knife stuck in the heart of our democracy by crooked Joe Biden, who was granted the right to muzzle his political opponent, the leading candidate for the presidency in 2024 and the most popular political leader in America. Biden had nothing to do with this. I don't know if Jason Miller's aware, but Biden's been a little busy with an ongoing war between Israel and Gaza.
Yeah, and I'll end on my favorite lie of Trump's in that little tirade. This judge, her whole life is about hating me. Really? Really, back in 1987, she was busy hating you? Okay, I know the world revolves around you, Donald Trump. You're the most special little snowflake in the world.
Totally.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to something entirely different. Believe it or not, I'm gonna give a CEO some credit because I think he did the right thing despite the tremendous cost to himself.
And it's not even me.
True. All right, so AMC's CEO, his name's Adam Aron, was the victim of a terrible catfishing extortion scandal. But rather than get extorted, he actually went to the authorities, knowing full well that the details would be made public and that it would be incredibly embarrassing for him. Now, according to a report from Semaphore, Aron apparently sent sexually explicit messages and images in a weeks-long text exchange with a woman named Sequoia Blackwood, who was catfishing him. Now, in March of 2022, Blackwood began texting Adam Aron under the name Maya or Mia. She sent photos of a person that her attorneys later said was actually a Russian model. Aron, who has been married since 1987, mistook her for a woman with whom he'd had a prior relationship, asking whether she was a ballerina who had done unmentionable things to him, according to court documents. Now, the two began trading messages and Aron eventually sent her explicit pictures, including of him and another woman, according to the government's sentencing memo. So not only is this embarrassing for him, he's obviously engaging in extramarital behaviors. So I'm sure he didn't want his wife to find out about this, although I don't know the dynamic of their relationship, who knows. But nonetheless, Blackwood later made up other characters and texted Aron through online burner accounts from a fake ex-boyfriend and a fictitious Vanity Fair reporter who claimed to have seen some of the messages. She demanded hundreds of thousands of dollars in hush money. She threatened to take the photos and messages to the press and AMC's board. At one point, she also texted Aron the unlisted cell phone numbers of 6 directors on the board, which is terrifying. I don't know how she managed to obtain those unlisted phone numbers. Now, we're not condoning Aron's actions and being unfaithful and whatever, but honestly, it is his personal business. Even if this wasn't catfishing, none of us should care about it. It's his personal life, who cares? However, it was a catfishing situation, and he has had some other embarrassing things happen in the past, including during one of the Zoom meetings he had with his board. He wasn't wearing pants. And then he was like fumbling around with the camera and they saw him, without pants on. It looks like he had like boxer briefs or whatever. We don't need to get that video, no one needs to see that. But moving on, he could have just paid for the blackmail, but he didn't. Instead, he decided, no, I'm not gonna let myself get extorted. More importantly, someone's gotta put a stop to this. He said, by definition, I live my life in the public eye. Unfortunately, last year, I became the victim of an elaborate criminal extortion by a third party who was unknown to me, related to false allegations about my personal life. Rather than give in to blackmail, I personally engaged counsel and other professional advisors and reported the matter to law enforcement. I did so knowing I risked personal embarrassment. But with my access to resources, if I did not stand up against blackmail, who could? A vigorous federal criminal investigation ensued, which resulted in the extortionist being arrested, convicted of a felony, and spending nearly a year in jail. At the time of the arrest, the US Attorney for the Southern District of New York commended my having reported the matter to the FBI and the US Department of Justice. I was asked by law enforcement to keep this matter confidential during their investigation and subsequent court case. Shortly after the extortionist July 2023 sentencing, I informed AMC's board of directors, which thoroughly reviewed the events with independent outside counsel. So justice was brought to the extortionist. And the one thing I'll say is, wealthy, powerful people seem to not understand that they are a target, but they just willy-nilly engage in super risky behavior anyway.
Well, no, but yeah, I hear you, Anna, but remember, the powerful are almost never held to account. So that's why.
They are when it comes to sex scandals.
No, only if they disturb other powerful people. So this kind of situation is very rare, right? But it's all about money and power. So let me explain what I'm saying. So first off, I agree with Anna 100%. More power to this brother for fighting back against this and getting this person arrested and end this nonsense, right? And whenever I see an unfair attack like this, this is, you could argue is silly and you do whatever you like with it, but whatever information came out of that, I immediately memory hold it. Like I get rid of it and I don't hold it against the person. Because then the blackmailer wins. If you go, well, now I'm judging your personal life. Even though you did the right thing, I'm gonna judge you anyway. No, so some of you go and judge if you want. That's not my business, your business, but I don't want the bad guys winning. So now there are other layers of how this is done, to Anna's point. The most famous incident of it, in my opinion, is what happened to Elliot Spitzer, former prosecutor in New York and then former governor of New York. And he was known as the sheriff of Wall Street, and he was holding the bankers accountable. And they hated that and they targeted him. And they purposely did a sting operation, which they later bragged about. There's a documentary on Netflix about it. And they caught him with a prostitute. And then everybody shamed him, and they said, shame, shame. They threw tomatoes out. They didn't, but they might as well have. It's like a scene out of Game of Thrones. And they got rid of their political opponent. And the bankers went back to ripping us all off and laughing their asses off, going, ha ha, it's a sex scandal. Americans can't resist a sex scandal. The minute you create one, boom, that person is eliminated. Their character is assassinated, and we move on and we go back to robbing Americans, okay? So my main thing to you guys is please don't fall for it. These character assassinations happen all the time. And I've told you about this before. When people wanted to target me because we're setting up Just Democrats, different things that I did, they called every woman who's ever worked here. They're fishing, because when you see a story, 9 out of 10 times it didn't organically pop up. Someone wanted that to be a story to attack someone in the news. So you have to judge, hey, is it real? And a lot of times the stories are totally real. Herschel Walker is an actual madman, and the stories that came out about him are totally true, right? So you have to use your judgment to see what's a character assassination, what's blackmail in this case, and what's a real story that you should be concerned about a public figure. And stop being everybody. Again, you do whatever you like, but I'll beseech you, which is an amusing way of putting it, stop being so obsessed with sex. Like, they know if he did financial impropriety, he did this, he did that, no one cares. The minute it's about sex, they're like, get him, tar and feather him. So that's a long way of saying even more respect to this guy for fighting back and having the courage to fight back, even when it was about sex.
Yep, all right. Let's take a break. I just remembered one of the goofy things he wanted to do to save the movie industry and AMC in particular, which was ship movie popcorn to people's houses.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
No,
I like this guy even more now. Sometimes I'll go into a movie theater just to buy the popcorn and then walk out.
You're no, you don't.
I swear to God, I've done that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, because I had a movie theater that was close to my house. I'd go walk there, get the popcorn, walk back, watch Netflix with movie popcorn.
Oh my God, well, maybe he's speaking to a certain slice of the American population.
Yeah, AMC dude, I see you.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Donald Trump has another gripe to share with us all. He believes that fly paper has been banned. Is it true? We'll give you the details and more when we come back.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
To a social break here. Let's go to YouTube members first. Luke Antunes writes in, I absolutely love Cenk's Trump impressions. Thank you, appreciate you. Vincent Morales says, Ben Glebe is Ben Glebe. I don't always agree with him, but he's a great man nevertheless. Thank you. Look, guys, the guy that I probably disagree with most on the show and on air, you all know it, Michael Schur, right? And Michael's one of my best friends. So that's okay, it's okay. We're allowed to disagree and Ben's allowed to get passionate about where he's from and where he's got family, and especially given the situation. So I love that you guys are keeping an open mind. Speaking of which, we go to Eddie Kawa, Mega Ironica is his other name. Anyway, he says, I'm an Arab pro-Palestinian Muslim. Looking at my 5-year-old daughter in front of me, my eyes are watering for that mom talking about our daughter. Talking about the Israeli mom who had seen the hostage video of her daughter. Thank you for having a human reaction. Yes, all of our hearts should go out to that mom and to that daughter who's being held hostage by Hamas. Absolutely. I love to hear that. All right, Becky Hoffer said, just subbed on YouTube and the app this week. TYT produces news with substance and not just word salad and slanted opinions. Thank you, Becky, appreciate you, especially since you're going to both places, that's amazing. All right, now I want to give you guys some updates real quick. Ida Rodriguez has a new book and it's on shoptyt.com, so make sure you're checking that out. Ida's book is called Legitimate Kid, a memoir. So Ida often hosts with us, she's fantastic. Check out our book at shoptyt.com. I'll throw in a random plug for my dad's book. The Original Young Turk is also on shoptyt.com. And I want to give you guys a plug. Remember, Equal Citizen is doing that amazing contest where they're gonna give away $50,000 for the person who could make the best video about corrupting influence of super PACs. They explain it on that website very clearly. So go to cancelsuperpacs.com for a chance to win $50,000. And don't forget our newsletter, the progress report, and you can get that at tyt.com/newsletter. Okay, now I go to members. Textan said, I actually thought Anna was calm, relatively speaking. When Ramaswamy asked her name several times, I gasped involuntarily and feared for his safety.
That's hilarious.
That idiot dimwitty writes in, Anna was too aggressive. She didn't curtsy, make him comfy, offer him tea, and bake some cookies. What kind of woman doesn't do stuff like that? I love the sarcasm. Uriah Heap says, Cenk, if you were still at, God forbid, MSNBC and spoke your truth about this conflict, you would be benched like the rest of the Muslim newscasters of the network, no doubt about it. Brother, I was benched for a lot less than that. Okay, so there's no way they would let me say my real opinions, in my opinion. TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Justin Caceres. Justin just joined. Anna.
Donald Trump is at it again, going around the country, speaking to his supporters when he should just be a comedian.
They're sick and they're evil and they're not going to be fixed. You're not going to make them into wonderful people one day. I didn't know you had flies in Iowa. I hate flies.
While discussing the very serious issue of murdered Israeli civilians during a speech in Iowa, Donald Trump got distracted by the bothersome fly, which, to be quite frank with you all, Cenk and I have a lot of experience with here in the TYT studios. It is very frustrating, but usually we just pretend like they don't exist. Donald Trump decided to use it for part of his stand-up routine. Not really, but of course he acknowledged the fly, and then he went on to give his fans a diatribe about just how much he hates flies, while making some strong statements about things that have been banned, allegedly.
I hate flies. Now I'll get in trouble for saying that. Cruelty to animals. No, it's true. You know, I said the other day, I was at a place and there's a beautiful place, but they had like flies. And I said, get fly paper. They said, sir, they're not allowed to sell it anymore because of cruelty to animals. They actually said that. I don't know. Can you get fly paper? It used to be great, right? But they said, you can't do that anymore, sir. It's cruelty. What the hell is going on with this country?
Now, I have confirmed with our resident animal rights activists that there are, in fact, some individuals who believe that it is animal cruelty to attack flies or kill flies. However, the notion that fly paper has been banned has already been debunked and disproven. We have the evidence for you right now in the form of a graphic that shows all the various options. That is not the right one, but let's go to the first graphic in the G block, please, because you'll see the image featuring all the different options consumers have in regard to fly paper of their choice.
Maybe they ran out. Maybe Trump was right.
Maybe.
Okay, so look, Trump is weirdo funny. So here's what I mean by that. He says things that are so inappropriate that sometimes you can't help but laugh, like, I can't believe he said that. So, for example, in this case, I mean, he was in the middle. I watched the longer version of the speech. It was in the middle of like talking about babies being burned alive. It was just the most serious, somber thing you've ever heard. And then he's like, I don't like flies. You know, I didn't know Iowa had flies. You didn't know Iowa had flies. That's okay, all right, interesting fact.
I did everything right and they attacked me.
They indicted me anyways. Okay, so and then he goes into this comedy routine, and he often speaks like a comic, like, no, it's true. A lot of comics say that, like, no, it's true. And he says, what the hell's going on in this country? Sometimes that's a crutch that comics use, etc.
He's a showman.
Yeah, so he went on a tangent about fly paper. Of course, that isn't remotely true.
Yeah, let's take a look at the fly paper option.
There it is.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to prove it to you all in case anyone was concerned that fly paper doesn't exist anymore.
Is fly paper still on the open market? Of course, he makes up everything. There's nothing he says is true.
I have no sympathy for flies, okay? And I actually think fly paper should be banned, not because I have sympathy for flies, but because I prefer those gadgets that like electrocute the flies. I enjoy those noises. I love them. Continue.
Sorry to some of our ex-hosts who don't even want insects hurt, okay? Anyways, if he just leave us alone, then he could go do a stand-up routine. And by the way, first of all, his audience would show up anyway. They love that
routine.
He'd
get paid for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Trump, you can make money off of it.
Money.
Oh my God, yeah.
Honestly, if he was no longer in the political realm and he posed no threat to the country and was just touring the country as a comedian, I might even go see him.
Yeah, I mean, he says the craziest things. But what's frustrating is that, like, okay, you go for a stand-up routine, you're entertained by it. He's a carnival barker, and that's why you came to the carnival in the first place, right? And you wanted the 3-ring circus, and he has all 3 rings. But guys, you're not supposed to actually believe him. Like, it isn't real. It's all an illusion. You can still, I guarantee you now, like, a giant percentage of people in the country don't believe that you can buy fly paper anymore. Right? So what am I gonna do? You're not like our country. I don't know what's going on. Earlier he said, "Oh, they're against democracy." No, brother, you're against democracy. You literally did a fake elector scheme to do a coup against the country.
Jake, why are you ruining this?
Okay, all right.
I just needed like a minute of comedic relief where we're not talking about, this is nonsense. You guys all understand this, right? This is a nonsense story. But we all need a little bit of nonsense because we need a mental break from like the freaking disastrous news that has been, overwhelming us, especially over the last week and a half. So like, stop ruining it, Jake.
I hear
ruining
you.
it.
You're totally right, except I'm gonna ruin it one last time. Okay, which is that, guys, it's like if he was not a dangerous person, this is all fun, okay? But he's a fascist. So don't forget that weirdo guy doing the weirdo stand-up routine is also a fascist who talks about poisoning the blood of our nation.
But have you considered when a fly once landed on Barack Obama and what that means about Barack Obama? And if you haven't wondered, don't worry, because Alex Jones is here to explain it to us.
There are dozens of videos and photos of Obama having flies land on him indoors at all times of year, and he'll be next to 100 people and no one has flies on him. Hillary reportedly, I was told people around her that they think she's demon possessed, okay? I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, okay?
If they weren't all super dangerous fascists, they'd be hilarious. So that's it. I guess we have now overwhelming proof that Donald Trump demon possessed. I didn't say it. That's Alex Jones' theory. And Alex Jones fans, you believe every one of his theories. Sorry.
And guess what? Trump, not the only one. We have another suspect. Let's watch.
Bias against minorities is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. But we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and that is improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice President.
Record unemployment, record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our minorities.
Thank you, Vice President. I'd like to respond.
The real question here is, who is the bigger demon? Because that fly implanted itself onto Mike Pence's, I will admit, full head of hair.
Yeah. Kamala Harris's look at the fly,
I know, she wants to laugh
was like
so
literally
badly.
the best thing she's ever done. Okay, like because
she had to look away to stop herself from laughing.
Yeah, but when she first gets transfixed by the fly, right there, when she's like, "Wait, is that a fly? Why isn't it flying off? I don't get it. It's still there. It's still there. Is it? I gotta look away. This is embarrassing." And then she comes back and starts smiling. She's like, I can't believe it's still there. Okay, so
good.
Best thing that ever happened. But now, like that Pence guy is gonna beat the carnival barker. He's like the most boring guy in America.
What was he talking about?
No one knows, no one cares.
I hate flies.
Indeed. Yuger, we have an amazing bonus episode for our members coming up. The Daily Wire has a response, a creative response to what they refer to as the woke remake of Snow White. It'll be a fun discussion. I can't wait to share the details of that along with Ben Shapiro's female doppelganger.
Yeah, the star of their new movie is super interesting, but I've got a nuanced take on it. It's twists and turns. Okay, as we always say. Okay, look, I got to read a couple last comments for you guys because I love reading your comments. Amber Jack 09 wrote in, "Hey St. Louis peeps, Left Hand Books, an independent bookstore in the Central West End, has Justices Coming prominently displayed at the front of the store if you're looking for the book." Oh, who doesn't love that? Let's give them another shout out. Central West End. Here. And of course, you can get it at tyt.com/justice. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. And then I really wanted to read this. Never Better wrote in, this from Twitch. That interview with Ramaswamy was great, especially when he kept saying that he was giving an hour of his time to do this interview, like he was doing you all a favor by being on.
Seriously.
Yeah, I thank you for pointing that out, because every time he said it, I laughed inside. Brother, you're running for president. You're trying to reach as many people as possible. You're doing us a favor by coming on? All right. Like, oh, thank you. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow, you're spending an hour of your time. Anyways, Intro Nerd Dragon, thank you for gifting 7 subs. Undead Pixels, thank you for gifting 3. Those are on Twitch. And then I'll read one from Mountain Dragon here as we wrap up. As everyone on TYT has said, and I've told my friends in life, we are not against Palestinians or Israelis, but we definitely question their governments. We have to question the powerful as a real news community, especially ones that have been proven to be corrupt. Both Hamas and Netanyahu, even our own government. The truth doesn't take sides and doesn't care about feelings. Mountain Dragon, I love that. That is so right. So we appreciate you. That's a member right there. And new member, made in Japan. Now we're made in Japan, so we can't lose. We're also big in Japan. Look at this, Dookie the Youper Dragon says our movie theater has drive-through window for popcorn.
Jeez, that's so crazy.
Funny. All right, guys, members, we'll see you right now.
I hate flies. Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show